When Michael's best friend raised his glass that night and said, "To the family we choose, and the secrets we keep," I swear the whole room went silent for half a second, long enough for the truth to slip through the cracks. My fork froze midair, and the sound of laughter that had carried through the evening suddenly felt hollow. The candles flickered like they were nervous too. Maybe that's dramatic to say, but that was the moment something deep in my chest shifted, like a door I hadn't known existed creaked open. We were having our usual holiday dinner. Same table, same chairs, same playlist Michael always put on to make things festive. The roast was still warm, the red wine glowed like guilt in our glasses, and from the outside, anyone would have thought it was a perfect night. But looking back now, if I had listened closer, maybe I would have heard the tremor in Ethan's voice before the laughter returned. That dinner changed how I saw every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every little smile across that dining table. Because sometimes people don't tell lies to hurt you. Sometimes they tell them to survive. The calm before 4 hours earlier, everything had been perfectly normal. I was in the kitchen, music playing low while I brushed oil over the roast chicken. The kind of simple ritual that always calmed me. The smell of garlic and thyme filled the air, the oven hummed softly. Outside, the sky was the color of cold metal, one of those gray December afternoons where the world feels still before the lights come on. Michael came in behind me, reaching for a taste like he always did. "You'll burn your fingers again," I said without turning. He popped a piece into his mouth anyway, waving his hand in the air because it was too hot. I laughed. That was us, small arguments wrapped in affection. We'd been married 15 years. Ethan had been part of those 15 years too, almost from the start. He was at our wedding, the godfather to our oldest child. And the brother Michael never had. He was charming, quick with a joke, and the kind of man you trusted, or at least, I did. Until that night. "Ethan's bringing dessert," Michael said, pouring himself a glass of wine even though it was barely 4 in the afternoon. "He said something fancy this time. Maybe this year he won't burn it," I said. We laughed again. It was easy then, before words like truth and choice started lingering in the air like smoke. Our children, Grace and Dylan, were in the living room arguing over the last candy cane from the tree. The smell of pine, cinnamon candles, and baking bread wrapped around the house. It felt like safety. It felt like family. And I, foolishly, believed that what we had was ordinary and good. When Ethan knocked on the door later that evening, I greeted him with a hug. He smelled of whiskey and cold winter air. He carried a pie so perfect it looked staged. "From the corner bakery," he admitted. "You know me." I knew him, yes, or thought I did. Ethan had always been the life of any gathering, lighting up rooms with easy charm. But lately, there'd been something quieter about him. More pauses between his jokes. More time spent looking at Michael than joining in on his laughter. Now, sitting at that dinner table, our little circle, lit by candles and the faint hum of Christmas music, I realized that the silence before his toast was its own kind of confession. A comfortable illusion life with Michael had never been extraordinary, but it was dependable. He was a quiet man, steady, even-tempered, quick to smile but slow to share. I used to mistake that calm for honesty. You don't notice what people hide when the surface is smooth. We met just after college. He worked in finance, neat and meticulous, while I taught art at a community center. He'd been the first man who looked at me like I wasn't too much, too talkative, too sensitive, too emotional. With Michael, life was gentle, predictable. And Ethan, well, Ethan was the salt to Michael's sugar. Loud where Michael was quiet. Messy where Michael was precise. When Michael and I had our first big fight, it was Ethan who showed up at our door with a bottle of cheap rum and that cheeky grin. "You two are too good to each other to mess this up," he'd said. That was more than 10 years ago. Ethan became part of the rhythm of our lives. He came to every family gathering, every barbecue, every holiday. Our kids loved him like an uncle. Sometimes he stayed late after parties, helping me clean up while Michael dozed on the couch, snoring softly. We'd talk about trivial things, the new teacher at Grace's school, the best way to roast marshmallows, the absurd price of laundry detergent. But lately, those conversations had turned heavier without me realizing why. There was a night, maybe 2 months before that dinner, when Ethan had said something that lingered. "You ever think about how some families are built on the wrong truths?" he asked, swirling his drink. I'd laughed it off. "You sound like one of my students before a philosophy test." He smiled sadly. "Yeah. Maybe I do. I never asked what he meant. The toast back at the dinner table that night, everyone was cheerful. Michael carved the chicken, Ethan poured the wine, Grace told a story about a class play, and Dylan was elbow deep in mashed potatoes. It was noisy, warm, alive, the kind of evening I used to store away in memory for rainy days. And then Ethan stood up, glass in hand, smiling that old wide grin. To the holidays, he said. To the people we love most. Everyone clinked their glasses. But he didn't sit down. He added, in a quieter tone, and to the families we choose, and the secrets we keep. Michael's hand froze, still holding his fork. It was quick, a moment, no more, but I saw it. The faintest flicker in his eyes. Fear. Guilt. Recognition? I didn't know then, but my heartbeat picked up like my body already did. I laughed awkwardly, trying to lighten the air. Well, cheers to that, I suppose. But Ethan didn't meet my eyes when he raised his glass. He kept looking at Michael instead. Later that night, when everyone was gone and the kids had gone to bed, I started cleaning up. The smell of candles and spilled wine hung heavy. Michael was quiet, pacing. Finally, I said, that was a strange thing for Ethan to say. He forced a laugh. You know him, too much whiskey and not enough sense. But his voice cracked just enough. I turned to look at him. Michael, what did he mean? He looked at me like someone trying to calculate how much truth a person can bear. And then he said, it's nothing, really. Something from a long time ago. The problem with long-hidden things is that time doesn't kill them, it preserves them. And that night, as I stood washing dishes alone, I could still hear Ethan's words echoing from the dining room to the secrets we keep. The next day felt different, though everything looked the same. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, but it didn't chase away the heaviness I carried from the night before. Michael sat across from me, scrolling through his phone, his jaw tight. The kids laughed upstairs, unaware of the storm gathering just beneath our roof. I tried to keep things light, making breakfast, humming the usual tunes, but all I could think about was Ethan's toast. What secrets were buried so deep that even Michael seemed afraid to mention them? I caught the tremor in his voice, the way his eyes darted away when I pressed for answers. Michael, I said gently, placing a hand over his. You can tell me. Whatever it is. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and looked at me like I was the only thing steady in a spinning world. It's complicated, he said quietly. Not just something you explain over eggs and toast. I nodded, sensing that tonight, perhaps after the kids were asleep, we would have to navigate this tangled truth together. But until then, life demanded its usual rhythm, the school runs, the emails, the endless errands. Days passed, and the undercurrent of tension grew heavier. I noticed Ethan more during our rare encounters, his usual jokes replaced with thoughtful silence, his laughter occasionally forced. What had changed between us all? And why was Michael shutting me out? One evening, Grace asked me softly, Mom, why does Uncle Ethan look sad sometimes? I hesitated, searching for a simple answer that wouldn't unravel more than I was ready to share. Sometimes adults have things they're figuring out, sweetie. But Uncle Ethan loves you. Her small hand found mine, and I squeezed it softly. Protecting the kids felt more urgent than ever. The first real clue, though, came on a Saturday afternoon. Michael and Ethan had gone out to clear the garage, a task that usually meant hours of laughter and reminiscing. But when I peeked out the window, their conversation looked tense, Michael's arms crossed, Ethan's head bowed as if carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Later, when Michael returned alone, his face pale and tight, I knew the silence between us was about to be broken. Ethan, he started, then stopped. There's something I need to tell you. Tell me what? I asked, heart pounding. That night with the toast, Michael said, voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't just words. Ethan's been living a secret that changes everything about us. I sat down, feeling the weight of the words settle like bricks on my chest. Michael took a breath. Ethan. He's not just my best friend. He's your son. The room spun. My mind raced back through years of laughter, hugs, and quiet moments. How could I have missed it? The resemblance, the shared mannerisms, the way Ethan looked at me now, it all clicked into a painful, beautiful truth. I thought you knew, Michael said, sorrow etched deep in his eyes. I was too afraid to tell you. His mother, my first love, made me swear never to speak of it. I promised to protect you both. Tears blurred my vision. The woman I had trusted, the mother of Michael's son, had lied not just to us but to herself. And we had been living alongside this hidden identity, like ghosts in a house full of light. That night, the quiet we shared was filled with a new understanding, one stitched together with secrets, love, and the fragile threads of family. The days after that conversation felt like I was walking through a fog. The familiar edges of my life blurred into uncertainty. How long had this secret been buried? Why had the truth been kept from me all this time? And most importantly, how do you rebuild when the foundation you thought was solid reveals chasms underneath? I watched Ethan closely at the next family dinner, the same room where his toast had cracked open everything. He was quieter than usual, avoiding my eyes, fingers nervously tapping the table's edge. The laughter seemed more brittle now, like porcelain ready to shatter. One night, unable to hold the weight any longer, I confronted Ethan alone in the living room after everyone else had gone to bed. "Ethan," I said softly, not wanting to startle him. "Can you tell me everything? I mean everything." He looked at me, eyes wide with a mix of fear and relief. His voice barely above a whisper, he began, "I wasn't sure if you'd want to know. My mother, she wanted to protect me from things she couldn't face. She asked Michael to keep the secret. I grew up thinking I was alone in this world, that I was just some kid without a home. But Michael was always there, watching over me from afar." He paused, swallowing hard. "I didn't know you were my family until recently." That night, I wanted to say so much more with my toast than I could. The ache in his voice pulled at my heart. For years, Ethan had been carrying a hidden identity, one forged between love, lies, and silent pain. As I listened, I noticed the little habits I'd always admired, the way he crinkled his nose when confused, how he tapped his foot when nervous, all reflections of Michael. The pieces were finally fitting together in a bittersweet puzzle, but it wasn't just about Ethan. It was about the woman who chose silence over truth. Michael and I talked long into the night, peeling back layers of history. His first love had been young, scared, caught in a web of expectations. Instead of sharing the truth, she'd built a wall of lies, hoping to shield her son from the chaos of fragmented family ties. "This secret was a kind of love," Michael said quietly, voice broken. "A misguided attempt to protect." I rested my head on his shoulder and let the sorrow wash over us. Our family was changing before my eyes, not breaking, but bending into something new, fragile but real. As the truth settled in, the holidays approached again, but everything felt changed. The rituals, the decorating, the meals, the laughter echoed in a new light. Each smile, each glance held a hidden question. How do we move forward when the past we built our lives around was a carefully woven tapestry of secrets? Michael and I agreed that honesty would be our new foundation, but revealing the secret wasn't simple. We had to tell Grace and Dylan, our children, who had known Ethan only as a close family friend. Explaining family in a new way to them was its own challenge. One chilly evening, as snow fell softly against the windowpane, I sat with Grace on the couch. Her wide eyes searched mine. "Mom," she whispered, "is Ethan really our brother?" I nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness. "He is, sweetheart. And sometimes family stories are more complicated than we think." She reached for my hand, a small, brave smile forming. "I'm glad you told me." Dylan took it differently, more quiet, more confused. He wasn't ready to say much, but every so often, I'd catch his gaze lingering on Ethan, trying to understand. Then came the hardest moment, telling Ethan's biological mother, Lisa. After years of silence, the woman who had built walls around herself had to confront the life she had left behind. The meeting was tense. Lisa looked older than I expected, her eyes tired but honest. Tears spilled from her as she apologized, not just to Michael and me, but to Ethan, to her children, to the family she had fractured without meaning to. "It was never about hiding him," she said through trembling lips. "It was about fear. Fear of losing everything." Her confession was a raw reminder. Secrets are often born in shadows, not of malice but of pain. The holiday after that was quieter, but it was real. Michael, Ethan, Lisa, Grace, Dylan, and I woven together in a fragile new tapestry of family. We did not forget what had been hidden. Instead, we chose to embrace what had been revealed. Each moment together held a lesson, not just about secrets, but about the strength found in facing them. The dinners were slower, the conversations softer, filled with unspoken promises to protect this fragile new truth. As I sit now remembering that night, the toast, the pause in the laughter, I realize that family is never just about what's spoken. It's about the trust we build after the silence, the choices to forgive, and the courage to love beyond the mistakes. The reaction following the revelation was like a quiet storm. Not the kind that announces itself with thunder, but one that seeps into every corner of your life, altering the everyday in subtle, profound ways. First, I felt a swirl of emotions: shock, betrayal, confusion, but beneath it all was a seed of understanding. Secrets, I learned, aren't always about deception. Sometimes, like Ethan's, they're born from love distorted by fear. Michael wrestled with guilt, not just for hiding the truth, but for the unintended consequences it brought upon all of us. "I thought I was protecting you, protecting Ethan," he said one night, voice heavy with regret. "But I didn't realize how much pain silence could cause." Ethan, too, carried his own burdens, years spent thinking he was alone, only to find out family had been within reach all along. Watching him navigate this new reality gave me a fresh perspective on what it means to belong. We approached the next holiday season with tentative hearts. The gatherings that once felt predictable now carried layers of unspoken understanding. It was a slow dance to find new rhythms, to rebuild trust. Some family members struggled with the news. There were whispered conversations, sideways glances, moments where the distance between us felt unbearable. Yet even in those fractures, I found hope. One day, my mother reached out, tears in her eyes. "Family is messy," she said, voice soft. "But it's worth fighting for." I realized then that the greatest lesson this secret had taught me was about courage, the courage to face the uncomfortable, to hold space for flaws, and to choose love even when it's complicated. Our story, like many, is imperfect. It's about hidden truths that threaten to divide, but also about the power of honesty to heal. Through it all, I found strength in vulnerability, and peace in the promise of forgiveness. The public consequence came slowly, not as a sudden explosion, but as the truth seeped into the lives of those around us. Friends, family, neighbors, everyone felt the ripple effect of a secret revealed. Some were understanding, others judgmental. "How could they keep something like this from us?" whispers floated through gatherings. But more often than not, the response was a mixture of empathy and discomfort, because family secrets are never just private. They live in the shared spaces of community and history. At work, Michael faced sideways glances and hushed conversations. The man who had always been a pillar of integrity now carried an invisible burden. Yet he bore it with quiet dignity, refusing to let the silence around him deepen into shame. Even I felt the weight. People who had known us for years looked at me differently, as if reassessing the woman who had accepted a half-truth. But I realized that bearing the truth meant embracing imperfection. Mine, Michael's, and Ethan's. Ethan's journey was the hardest to witness. The son who had spent a lifetime disconnected now navigated the tricky terrain of acceptance and identity. His relationship with Lisa, his biological mother, was tentative but healing. Two broken people learning to rebuild. One afternoon, as we sat watching Grace and Dylan play in the yard, Ethan said quietly, "I'm grateful to finally know who I am. Even if it took all this time." That moment, so simple yet profound, reminded me why the hard truths were worth facing. We didn't seek vengeance or blame. Instead, we chose accountability and grace. Lisa faced her own reckoning, publicly apologizing to the family she'd left in shadows. Her courage to confront the past was a testament to the power of honesty. The community, though grappling with the news, began to rally around us, not because the secret was easy to digest, but because it spoke to something universal: the complexity of family, the messiness of love, and the strength found in forgiveness. The road to resolution felt long and uneven, but it was ours to walk. With each day, the pieces of our fractured family began to mend, not by forgetting the past but by making peace with it. I found myself learning new things about love, its resilience, its stubbornness. Michael and I talked more openly than ever, our conversations flowing with honesty instead of guarded silence. The walls that had divided us, built from unspoken fears, started coming down, replaced by trust and understanding. Ethan found his place in this evolving story. What began as hesitation transformed into acceptance, and then bond. Grace and Dylan grew closer to him, children's hearts quicker to forgive than ours. We made new traditions, Small gestures that renewed our connection. Shared meals where laughter replaced awkward silences, walks in the park where we spoke of dreams, not secrets. Forgiveness became our quiet anthem. Not the kind that erases pain, but the one that embraces it, holds it gently, and chooses love anyway. A tea night, when the house was still and the world outside slowed, I would reflect on the lessons this journey had taught me. About the power of truth, not just spoken but lived. About the strength in being vulnerable. About family, not just who we are born to, but who we choose to become with. I won't say it was easy. Healing never is. But it was beautiful in its own imperfect way. As the quiet of the night settles over our home, and the flickering candles cast long shadows across the walls, I find myself reflecting on the journey we've taken. The secrets kept in silence, the truths that slipped out between sips of wine, and the family that was never just by blood, but by choice and forgiveness. I've learned that sometimes the deepest bonds come from the hardest moments. It's not perfection that holds a family together, but the willingness to embrace each other even when the truth is messy and painful. The holidays will never be the same again for us. Every toast, every shared smile, carries the weight of what we discovered. But within that weight, there is also light, a new kind of light born from honesty and courage. So I leave you with this question. When the secrets come out in your family, would you face them with the same quiet strength? Would you choose love over anger, forgiveness over bitterness? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories, your lessons, and your courage. If this story touched you, or made you think about your own family in a new way, please subscribe and support our channel. Because every family has a story worth telling, even the ones wrapped in secrets. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of each other.